How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. It's going to be a big show because our special guest today is Mick Foley. We'll be up in about a half an hour. We'll be talking about his book. We'll be talking about his career. And pretty much anything you guys want to talk to Mick Foley about, you can talk to him. So have your questions ready because we want to go through as many calls as callers as we can tonight, because I'm sure that we're going to be overloaded with callers and emails once he gets on. Bryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good. Any big news?
Can you hear that outside?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to worry.
What is it?
It's the hottest day of the year, and there's like they're building a rock quarry across the street or something, and I can't shut the window. I'm dying.
Those poor workers.
Yes.
It's the hottest day of the year here too. It's 104 when I just got in before the show.
Really?
Yeah. So
I think it's like 70 here, and I consider that the hottest day of the year.
Good grief. 70? I wish it was 70. Oh, my God.
Maybe a little hotter. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any big news? Actually, oh, you know things are slow. You know what I did last night? I went probably for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years without ever having any free time, right? So now I at times, actually have free time. So,
and you don't know what to do.
Well, I still don't watch much television, so I could always do that. But, usually with my free time, I try to figure out what can I do that has to do with wrestling. So I was
it's like this weekend, it was Memorial Day, and I didn't go do anything. And I had all this free time, and I did the newsletter, and I pretty much did everything I needed to do for the day. And I just kind of sat there, and it was like, okay, now what? Yeah,
because I used to always, there was never a time when I would be caught up on tapes, right? Now it's like I'm going I hope somebody sends me a tape. I want to watch, I want to watch some Japanese wrestling. I want to watch some
I got
wrestling.
something I can send you as a tape, too, when I'm done watching it. One of our callers from a few months ago sent me his Tough Enough tape. And I will be watching it, and then I will send it on to you.
By the way, Bryan, did you get, since we're talking about that, did you get the tape that I sent you of the, was it Fukuoka Dome?
Yeah, I just got it. Thanks.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but...
So you have not been crying lately, have you?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh, the whole show. Just 2 hours of sadness. For all sorts of different reasons. Not that the show... except for the main event, and except for the last two matches, it was really good television. And then the last two matches were just unbelievably bad, but we can talk about that later. But one of the things was so weird. So anyway, last night, I'm going there's probably not going to be a ton of news this weekend in wrestling because there's no big shows. So, it's just going to be Raw, and, there's nothing huge in Japan. The biggest shows are Wednesday and Friday of next week, which will be in the following week's Observer. So I'm going I've never had problems filling an Observer. And a lot of times on, Thursday and Friday, I go, I'm going to have problems, and I never do. So last night I was thinking, I may have problems. So what I did was I wrote a story about, that thing, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but just trying to find ironies and stuff. So I went, last year at this time, 5 years ago at this time, and 10 years ago at this time, just looked back at some old notes. And, there's quite a few ironies when you actually read them. It's real interesting. But what's so interesting is a year ago in American wrestling, everything is so completely different. 5 years ago, it's like another world. I'm thinking back, 5 years ago was like the World Wrestling Peace Festival in L.A. for the few of you listening who are actually at that show or remember that show, which was a hell of a show. And to me, it just seems like, that was like a lifetime ago, right? So then I'm going 10 years back, and of course 10 years back in American wrestling, God, was Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter feuding, you know what I mean? Or something like that. So anyway, but what was interesting is in Mexico, in EMLL, it's the exact same guys on top 10 years ago. It's like they had a big tournament, and it's like Rayo de Jalisco and Cien Cars and Mascherano dos Mil, and I'm reading about how bad these guys are, and they're still there on top. It's 10 years later. Nothing ever changes. The Vianos and Porky and... Anyway, I don't know.
I can't remember who it was, but I was watching somebody on EMLL, and they looked about 100 years old, and they did a tope. I'm trying to remember who it was. But anyway, I was comparing him with someone like... Huh?
It wasn't Satanico, was it?
No. Anyway, I was comparing him to somebody in All Japan, one of those guys that's just been around forever, and it's just, he still has a role. And also I just thought, that's everyone on this entire roster in EMLL with about 10 exceptions. They're all so old.
Yeah. They work that different stuff. And it's fun because they actually... The EMLL main event style is like it's a great style for the live crowd. They're not... there's one thing when you go to Mexico live, and as far as the wrestling goes, is that the wrestlers, because they're so experienced.
Ringo Mendoza, that's who it was.
Oh, he's old. Ringo Mendoza was. I mean, I remember. Ringo Mendoza got his name from Ringo Starr of the Beatles. So
yes.
just think about how old that is.
There.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, yeah, I mean, Ringo Mendoza, I remember him from the 70s. But so anyway, the guys, those older guys like Satanico and I mean, they know how to work a live crowd. They're not really as good at TV because our culture, TV's been so important, and in their culture, I mean, TV's now been around for 10 years and all that, the younger guy, but there's the idea of working the camera. It's not really something that's been passed down from generation to generation in Mexico like in the United States, but the idea of working the live crowd, and remember these guys in Mexico are out there working, 5 to 8 to 10 times a week. So, I mean, the number of matches they have is just, and 20-minute matches, even though they're all 6-man tags. So, I mean, they have so much ring time in there. And, they're just like, it's just like really, I don't know. It's just really interesting to watch, that aspect of their game. They're ahead of like almost anyone. I mean, in other aspects, obviously, because of their age, I mean, they're not. I mean,
still, you look at them at that age, and they'll just be doing their regular match, and all of a sudden, some like 200-year-old man will bust out a tope or something. Just you just in total awe of this.
You know what I always wish, this was one of my wishes that never came true, and now Larry Zbyszko is no longer an announcer and WCW is no longer a company, it never happened. But remember when the Luchadors first started in WCW, like 96-ish? And 5 years ago, Rey Mysterio Jr. was about to start in WCW. So that's exactly when it was. So anyway, when Larry Zbyszko would always go, when they would do a hot move, he would always like not put it over and go, oh, they're going to have such a short career, which actually, Larry Zbyszko's been wrestling for a long time, and that is kind of like what a veteran wrestler who's all ached and pained from doing an easier style would say.
Yeah.
And he's right, okay? But I just always wish that somebody would just go to him and just go, everyone in EMLL is older than you. You've been retired for 5 years. They're still on top. So what does that say?
And they're still working 5 nights a week.
They're working, and they're still having good matches. So there. But anyway, let's see what else is going on. Couple of notes right at the end of the show yesterday. Actually, we got the ratings. I guess we could start with that. Ratings were 4.2. Actually, it was down from last week by percentage points. It was down like about 65,000 viewers from last week, which on a national basis is not very much, but it's the 8th straight week where they've declined. And that's coming off of their best week of TV in a long time. I don't know what to say about it, other than that's what the number says. And I don't know. You got any comments on that?
I'm not even worried. It takes a while.
Oh, it does take a while. The main event did a 4.8, the Benoit-Austin match. So that was it was a higher rating than the main event the week before. The show started lower. In fact, they did 3.4 in their first quarter, which is incredibly low for Raw. And they grew pretty much the whole show. There was one little blip when Albert and Eddie Guerrero were out where the rating went down a little bit. Actually, that's the only time the rating declined the whole show.
Still, that's a positive, though, because last week that didn't happen.
No, it was a positive. That's right, absolutely, as far as the rating grew and all that. So, I mean, it was a good show for the most part. I mean, some people didn't like the finish. I didn't really dislike the finish as much as the mentality. The mentality behind the finish left a lot to be desired, but the actual finish itself is just it's a wrestling cliche. So
yeah. The one thing is, of all the quarters to worry about, I would fret least about that first quarter, just because it's always low. Everybody always expects it's going to be that stupid interview. If that first quarter got a 0.1 and then it immediately jumped to like a 5 in the second quarter, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Let me see what we got here. Let's see. Heat set its all-time low, or tied its all-time low with another 1.1. They were doing a 2.5 with that show a year ago this time, so that's a hell of a drop.
Like when it first debuted and it was an A show.
No, 2.5 was already when it was a C show last year at this time. I mean, when it first was debuting, they topped 4s many times. Yeah. So that show is dying a miserable death in the ratings right now.
And the thing is, I haven't even been watching it every single week, but it's almost like every week they have to try and experiment with something different. Well, let's get a new guy out here. Let's have Michael Cole to set. Let's have these guys do commentary. Let's do some goofball thing with Hunter in the hospital, which actually was pretty good, but, how was anyone supposed to know about that? They didn't really plug that on SmackDown either. It was just like, well, if you watch the weekend shows, you'll know that Hunter's going to be there, or if you go to WWF.com or whatever. But it's just like, they need to find a format and stick with it. I don't know what the format is that people would watch, but...
Wasn't Sunday like the Grandmaster Sexay Steve Blackman day?
Yes, it was. I actually watched that show.
And there you go. I mean, if ever there's going to be a day where people go, this is the one to skip. Yeah. That's the one. Speaking of Grandmaster, he's still fired. There's actually nothing new on that at all. Let's see. A couple of things from OneWrestling.com. They mentioned that Booker T had signed a release, Time Warner buyout, which I'm presuming is true, and everyone, pretty much it's expected in WWF that Booker T and Buff Bagwell, who is not, someone from WWF told me that they thought he might have signed, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't. I know his contract is up June 24th, but pretty much Booker T and Buff Bagwell are pretty much considered in. Paige is in the situation where everyone's kind of on the, everyone expects Paige in, but he has not gotten his buyout yet, so he's in the middle of that one. But I know he wants to be in, or at least that's what they think he wants to be in, and I'm sure he does. So that's the status there. Now, as far as anything having to do with WCW, the new WCW being on TBS or ever being on TBS, I mean, at 3 different WF sources, including the main one, say that there was nothing to it, there was never anything to it. Even if they wanted there to be something to it, they couldn't do it because they got an exclusive contract with Viacom. So that's what I was told.
There you go.
So there you go. We got, let's see, the poll question for today.
I was talking to someone about the buyout, and they didn't know for certain, but they were talking about, it might have been something where when Vince bought the company, there was like a no-compete clause where TBS and TNT can't even have any wrestling programming, even if they want to, for like 5 or 10 years. That would be bad news.
That I don't
even
know.
If like a year down the road where everything kind of turns around in the media or whatever, and people are more accepting of wrestling, and someone from TNT goes, hey, might as well get a wrestling show on now. If they have the no-compete, then there's nothing they can do.
There may be that.
And it totally sounds like something that Vince would do. Well,
when you buy companies, generally speaking, you always put a no-compete clause in the thing. Now, it may be a no-compete that they,
that they start a company. But they were talking about like no-compete as far as putting anything on their TV stations.
Yeah, well, obviously, but they already have the thing on the Turner South. And I would, I would just, wasn't there a Braves game? Now, I could be wrong about this, where there was a rain out and they put wrestling on in the last week. Just like old tapes of wrestling just to fill time, and this would have been on TBS. Or was it on Turner South? I forget. I got an email from someone who was watching, WCW, and they said the Braves are having a rain out and there's wrestling on right now.
Huh.
So now the Turner South deal is up through, I think, 2003 or 2005. And that's a WWF deal that they had to take on when they bought the company. So, the Turner Classics shows, even though the WWF owns the footage, that contract is still with the
I don't think they would be so much concerned about a channel like Turner South, though. I think it would be more TNT and TBS.
Well, if the thing was on TBS, then that would tell you that that's not the case, that there's no thing on that. Now, as far as starting their own company, I would be certain that they signed a non-compete that these guys couldn't start their own wrestling company because, if you own a company like that, like a wrestling company, and you just go, hey, we're going to sell it, and they get like, say, $20 million, and the next day they, open up a new company.
Start a company.
Yeah, it's just like, that's ridiculous, and, Vince would never be dumb enough to fall for that. So I'm sure there's a no-compete as far as them owning the company, as far as them putting something on. There very well may be, but I just don't know. What else? Actually, we don't have any other big news other than SmackDown's tonight. There's a super main event from all accounts. Nothing?
I don't think there's anything else.
Oh, my God. What
a week this will be.
What?
What a week this will be.
It's going to be a big weekend. This is from Michael, who goes, why is the share higher this week than the share last week if this week had slightly less viewers? That's because there were less people. The share is the percentage of television sets that are watching. So fewer television sets were on because all the networks are in reruns than the week before. So even though there were fewer viewers, they actually had a higher share. But the rating is the percentage of the total universe of homes, and that was slightly down. And it was only slightly down from last week. But anyway, that's why.
That's completely right, and it makes perfect sense. But I can completely understand why we get that question like every week, because Sometimes I'll be sitting here listening to your explanation and I'll get confused.
Hey,
I understand it.
You got to read next week's Observer when I talk about the Hispanic ratings. You know, those things those things are a total joke, just so you know. They're a complete joke. Last week's ratings...
Isn't it like if you add things up, things just don't work out?
Well, they certainly didn't this week. Last week, their rating for Galavision, not last week, Tuesday night's rating for Galavision, for the 3-hour block, among the males 18 to 34, was like bigger than the WWF's. Much bigger. I mean, much bigger than the WWF's the night before.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's only rating Spanish households, so that's not inconceivable. But it is inconceivable that every home that was watching Galavision Lucha Libre, which should not include my home because I wasn't watching it, but whoever taped it for you would include their home, would have to average, for the ratings to make sense, 2.5 males between the age of 18 to 49 per household for those numbers to add up. So think about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that would work in the instance of the tape that I got.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about the rest of the nation, though.
Well, it's got to be in every single home. Anyway,
I count the two people that taped it, and then me as one half.
Okay, then that's actually perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're between 18 and 49. It's from Zach McGee, who was going, I was wondering what your thoughts are on CZW and people comparing them with early ECW. I don't really compare them with ECW at all, because ECW used bigger name talent. From the start, they mixed in like the local guys and then big names, and then more big names, and then Paulie created his own stars, and there was more booking. This stuff is more extreme and brutal, and the high spots of the young guys are really, really good. I don't know. It's way too early. Of course, ECW started without that many fans, but they also had Paulie, and Paulie is kind of a genius.
And they had Tito Santana.
Like, that made a difference. If you think they have... Yeah, they did.
Hey, it may have made a difference with 2.5 Hispanic viewers per home watching Galavision.
Okay. If you think they have what it takes to be the promotion that competes with the WWF in a few years, don't pull the cart before the horse. ECW never could compete with WWF. The thing with wrestling is in a few years, who the hell knows? I mean, I would say on the surface, like, the idea of CZW competing with WWF is ridiculous. But in 5 years, who the hell knows? I mean, this business, What can you say? Which of these teams with a bad gimmick would you say was the best in the ring? Money Incorporated, Dynamic Dudes, the Islanders, the New Heart Foundation, which was Owen and Jim Neidhart, and High Energy, which was Owen and Coco Beware. I guess of those, Money Incorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Why were they incorporated?
I don't know.
In case the team lost all their money?
I guess so, yeah. It's from John from Toronto. Goes, when WCW finally gets up and running, what women do you and Bryan think will be there? Let's see. Tori Wilson. They're negotiating with. Yeah, they're negotiating with Tori Wilson. Stacey Keebler's under contract. And I haven't heard any other names. He goes, me personally, I hope... They're not bringing her in, are they?
No,
you're being facetious, huh? I know.
Yeah.
He goes, me personally, I hope Dawn Marie is included. There's always that possibility. I know it sounds cheesy, but Dawn Marie and Miss Hancock in a feud would be so fun and entertaining. I don't know about that. Because once they have to wrestle, it kind of kills it, doesn't it? I mean, if they're in a feud...
It kills it with a lot of the valleys that they have doing wrestling.
I think that if they have, like, a deal where Dawn Marie has a good worker, and Miss Hancock, Stacey Keebler has a good worker, and they have the women run around in the course of the match, that would be okay. But if they make it like a one-on-one feud without the guys to back them up, it's kind of hopeless because ultimately in wrestling you've got to, you're just naturally going to put them in the ring, and then it kind of dies because, Dawn Marie has been training, and Stacey Keebler, God, I don't know. I just remember her matches, and I just remember those Nitro Girl matches in WCW, and they didn't work. Let's see, this is from Ken Murphy, who goes, are there any Pride shows other than the Pride Grand Prix and Return of the Warriors that have been released on video? I do not know the answer. Does anyone know the answer if any of the other Prides have been released? Those are the only two that I've heard of. I don't know. At the video stores. Let's see. We've got a lot of stuff here for Mick Foley. Okay. Let's see. This says that they are reporting that Hogan's Universal taping will be August 8th. This is One Wrestling, so I had heard August, so it makes sense to me. This is a note here. We're really quick on the poll. What did you think of the push of Benoit and Jericho? You know, we usually have differences of opinion, but this one is 88% say it's been a huge positive so far. 10% said it's made for good matches, but it will not help business, and 2% said it's made no difference. So pretty much 98% think that it has helped the match quality, which God knows it has. Boy, that's a controversial statement there, huh?
You know, one thing also is, I was thinking again about the Undertaker's wife's stalker. And I think one of the reasons people are so interested is because they expect a new face, and they really want to see it badly. And I think that that is a good sign for WCW, because soon there will be many new faces for people to watch if they desire to do so.
This is, let's see, the UPW show. This is from Ben Miller. He gave me a report on the show, which I had not seen. He says it was pretty good. It had a really good main event. The crowd was down from the last show, which is to be expected, but it was still pretty full. Adam Pearce is superb on the mic. I don't know if he could be a face, but he has great heel charisma. His mic work is great. I really was impressed with Adam Pearce at the last show. The angle with Shinya Hashimoto was great. The mic work was a little weak with Rick Bassman on the stick, but Horseshoe was really good. And Horseshoe and Naohiro Hoshikawa was the second best match on the show, even though it was pretty short. I'll let you guess who carried. Horseshoe had a good match with Hoshikawa. I am like stunned. I mean, Horseshoe. Some of you actually may remember Horseshoe. He used to do WCW Saturday nights. He's like this.
Believe me, a lot of people remember him.
Yeah, he's like, 6'4", probably, about 280, 290? Hoshikawa's like a little junior heavyweight. I mean, Hoshikawa's a hell of a worker. He goes, I can't say enough good things about the Ballard brothers versus Nova and Frankie Kazarian main event. I knew that would be good. As expected, it was built around spots, but it was really great. Nova and Frankie did some top-shelf double-team stuff, and they all had a layer of polish that most guys on the show lacked. Good for them. They had a three-way lightweight match that was decent, and I really liked B-Boy in that match. The guy was over with the female fans, and he looked smooth. He goes, Super Dragon versus Juventud had dynamite spots. As expected, the crowd was really into him. Nathan Jones did not look as impressive as last time, but boy, does he have the build and athletic ability and charisma to be a star. It will be hard to explain unless you see the show, but the booking and some other stuff ticked me off. Miss Delicious had a cat fight with Drazen at one point. The angle was to have Drazen dominate because she was bigger. Okay, Drazen's that real tall girl. Now, you guys wouldn't know who she is. She's this real tall girl. But what resulted was Drazen on top of her choking her out for like 30 seconds because they didn't roll around and the ref was slow to break it up. And then Delicious never sold the beating and then got right back to timekeeping. Yeah, that sounds hideous. This is not a booking problem per se, but they run a WWF-style thing with so many valets and managers that there's so much interference. The problem I have with it is the referees see all of it. At least the ref should at least be looking away during the interference or call for the DQ. I'm talking about blatant stuff like double-team high spots with people from outside the ring. I don't know, maybe it's nitpicky, but it kills my suspension of disbelief. I totally agree with that stuff. You know, like, don't you think that they should at least put forth the effort to make it look like the double-teaming the referee isn't seeing it? Because it just makes the referee look stupid.
Yeah. The thing that makes me mad is sometimes they'll even do this in the WWF where, you know, like a Dudley match, they'll bring the table in or whatever, and it's like, why is a table being allowed in the ring? Because these guys are the Dudleys, you know? Or just goofball things like that where, you know, why will the ref allow this during this match and not later on?
Because the handling of Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo was bad. First off, both guys jobbed. Well, let's see. I figured O'Haire would job because he's fighting for the title against Samoa Joe. Palumbo would have bought with Henderson. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Henderson's a better worker than Palumbo. Anyway, both guys jobbed. I understand that to a degree, given they're not full-time guys, but they're supposed to draw here as faces, and the booking made them both look like idiots. Wow. First, Mikey Henderson beat Palumbo when Samoa Joe interfered. That's fine. But then Samoa Joe, who dominated most of the match, beat O'Haire when Henderson interfered. Then they beat down O'Haire for a minute before Palumbo made the save. Logically, what was Palumbo doing backstage? If he had a brain, he would have suspected a double team after losing his own match earlier that way. Well, I don't know. I mean, that happens all the time. There were other little things. Some of the 3 counts in the main event were ridiculously slow for no reason. There was no ref bump or anything, but the counts were awful. There was way too much time wasted on submissions by Samoa Joe, which the crowd didn't understand because nobody believed that Samoa Joe would win by submission or that O'Haire would ever submit. That's true. If you're going to do that, you have to set a precedent and have guys actually tap out, or else no one's going to believe them. Because it was a really enjoyable show overall. And anyway, that's the main stuff.
What was the angle with Hashimoto?
I don't know. Something with a horseshoe, I guess. And Rick Bassman. I don't know what. No, somebody tell us. What was the angle with Hashimoto? Let's see. Is there going to be anyone from the new WCW invading WF SmackDown tonight? If so, what match and who? Only Shane doing a run-in during the Kurt Angle match with Chris Jericho. That's the only one. Who should we thank for not seeing China on TV lately? I guess Stephanie. She writes the show. I have 2 theories regarding the stalker angle. Maybe this will be the WF's way of reintroducing the long since abandoned Blonde Bitch project, and Stevie will get his mega push. Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah. The stalker will be Sakuraba. Yeah, right. Sakuraba. Sure. That's a good one. Papa Shango. Let's see. The Undertaker's wife would be Sarah Calloway because the Undertaker was referred to by his real name during the 1999 Ministry angle. Oh, Russo was there. Everybody had their real name. Remember that?
That's right.
Who made more money in WrestleMania 1, Tito Santana or Liberace? I don't know, but I would be willing to bet my house that it was Liberace.
Yeah.
The WF stalker is Dude Love. Okay, great.
We can ask him.
Yeah, that's right. Would you consider Bubba Ray Dudley a very underrated big man worker? I wouldn't consider him underrated anymore. I think pretty much everyone knows how good he is. I think there was definitely a time when he was underrated, especially by me and Brian.
Oh, yeah.
Either that or he just improved a lot. I don't know which, because...
When they were coming in, remember we kept comparing it was going to be Public Enemy. It's going to be Public Enemy all over again. And by God, they ran with the ball.
Yeah. Is Shane McMahon adopted? No. Jeez. What else?
Where did that question come from?
The guy thought that Shane McMahon... Oh, Mick Foley's on the line. Let's get to him, because all our questions are for Mick Foley anyway. Mick, what's going on?
Yeah, you're leaving me hanging to find out if Shane's adopted or not?
I didn't know you were on the line yet. How you doing?
Good. I hope, excuse me, if this line goes out, I'm running a little behind. There's a lot of traffic here. I'm heading to the airport, so I expected to be in the lounge area where they have a special hotline for me waiting. But
and hot dogs, right?
What's that? No hot dogs.
Okay.
But so if this thing goes out, just work with me a little bit here.
No problem. So now, where are you headed?
I'm going to Chicago to do a media day, and then on Saturday, believe it or not, it's the biggest booksellers convention of the year. Big day in the book business, and then Saturday night there's a big authors get together. So there'll be about 35 pretty well known authors are going to be there.
Cool.
There, I just killed my other phone. That's the number that only you have, so it couldn't... Anyway, I'm sorry.
You guys hear me there?
No, we hear you perfect.
Okay, yeah, I had to ask my publicist. I was like, are these authors going to hate me? I don't know if there's any resentment against me, because they, the way we looked at a guy, like a Van Hammer or someone in WCW, it was like... I thought...
Test his first week.
My literary dues. But she thinks that I'll be fine.
Well, I think once you talk to everyone, you should be okay. Now, what's your thoughts as far as you've been running around with the media a lot, and in the book, you were very critical of aspects of the media that probably deserved it. I mean, has there been any like just an example? I know that you're doing something with I don't know if you taped it or not, but did you do something with like ABC World News Tonight? I mean, did they bring up the 2020 thing, or is it like? Are they just too embarrassed to even ask you about that?
They did ask me, not on the air. They did ask me about it, and I guess they work for the same company, but I get it's not. I can't really hold them at fault for that. And I'm with Jason Bernstein of the WWF. It's nice enough to drive. I was like, hey, can you drive me to the airport? Because I thought I'd be there in plenty of time, but we ran kind of over, and we were talking about the whole process, and we just said we'd be shocked if it's a negative piece because it was so positive. The whole day was so positive. Now, it'll be cut down to 2 minutes, but if they wanted to, they could do a negative piece, and that's so you're just putting your faith in the media, and I really think they're going to do a good piece on it. But the truth is, I'm a little happier this time around because I am starting to get covered by the people that I knocked for. I knocked the media in general for not covering it when they did. I think you made the point, when I did that. What do they call that? A conference call with the writers, where I said, look, even the headbangers got on Regis, and I can't get on there. They had a 5 days for the cookbook, and from what I understand, Regis is actually a fan of mine, and I can't get on the show. But this is the Times piece. I think did open a lot of doors. So I, and I've just read a piece. People has a piece coming out tomorrow, and I just read it, and it's actually very nice. So if the word gets out there in the mainstream and people don't buy the book, then I really can't complain. It's just they made a choice not to buy it, but at least they know it's out there.
So in general, media acceptance now is 10 times better than when the first book came out.
I don't know if I'd say 10 times, but it's quite a bit better. And I have no idea what the reviews are like, or even if people are reviewing it. But it's it's nice that several million people will see the piece on the ABC News, and that I guess millions of people read the People magazine. So at least the word is getting out there.
Now this People magazine is coming out this weekend?
Yeah, it'll be out tomorrow, actually.
Okay, and the ABC, what night's ABC on?
ABC
is that tomorrow?
Was supposed to be out Friday or Monday, but then they just spoke with the publicist and said they might want to cover the book signing on Saturday, get a little footage. So who knows? I mean, the guy said, he goes, it's a shame this is just a short piece. There's a lot to work with, and he was even entertaining the idea of, bringing up to his people the idea of, trying to get Bozell on and doing, like the little debate. Although I think that's highly unlikely.
Probably. He's been quiet of late.
Yeah, I really don't think he's going to get on a show with WWF people at this point.
Yeah.
Especially someone who's done their homework.
Yeah. I think his greatest asset is the general public's ignorance about wrestling, and he's able to score a lot of points by making claims like with the sponsors, and hoping that nobody knows that he hasn't really gotten the number of sponsors to pull out that he's claimed. So, yeah, I think people who do his homework would tend to frighten him a little bit.
In the book, the one thing, and I have to bring this up to you, because it's the one thing that gave both of us, I think, a sleepless night each, was the day that the Lusahadi thing. And I just want you to, tell everyone, basically, how that all went down and everything.
Yeah, my point on this is, and I'm not going to say, the WWF made me take out this. I mean, they made me take out a couple things for legal reasons that, I couldn't prove, and, you can't put them in the hot seat legally for something that I say. But in this case, the editor at HarperCollins said, look, WWF would really like you to, they want this name changed. And I said, you know what, I would have changed it anyway. My feeling, and you mentioned that, like an old girlfriend's name is going to be changed because, a 35-year-old woman with 3 kids doesn't need to be haunted by, by my image. Maybe her husband doesn't even know that her wife knew this guy. So they're not a public figure, and therefore their name can be changed. My feeling is, despite the number of books that Lou wrote, I don't consider him a public figure. And even if he was, I mean, I am willing, if people think that hurts my credibility, then I still stand by my decision to not further, injure the reputation and feelings of a 70-year-old man whose son is a major part of the WWF.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I wish is if you just not mentioned the name.
Yeah, maybe in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned the name at all. But I did. That was a big part of the book was looking at the writings, and I have conversations with the guy, and I don't know how I would have gone about doing that. Maybe I'll look back on it and figure out what I could have done. But I don't know. It's just you and Marvez there. Now your legions of followers will think it's a big deal, but I don't think anyone else thought it was a big deal.
Well, now has Lou done only ghostwriting, or has he done some ghostwriting, or has he written anything under his actual name?
Oh, he's written a lot of stuff under his actual name.
When I was in his apartment in Boca Raton, he has, the 17 books prominently displayed, and there's a lot of books, on the history of the Super Bowls and, about, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's a lot of football books he did. And the ghostwriting, I know it's, Willie Mays and Don Shula and Len Dawson, I think, or Hank Stram, one or the other. But, when I was in his apartment, he's divorced, so he lives alone, and his son, David, is up in WWF. And, a great deal of his apartment is dedicated to his writing career. And I just, it wasn't even that. I wish, looking back on it, I had just said he wasn't right for me instead of kind of making fun of the writing and illustrating it, because, I mean, then there would have been no reason to change the name. You know, like saying that his writing had as much depth as the kiddie pool in Munchkinland is kind of like a, you know, unnecessary cheap shot. And, you know, I wrote in the letter to the Observer that I do think there's a difference between, you know, bitterness and honesty, and I probably could have gotten the Luzahati point across without, you know, kind of hurting his feelings. But, you know, I'm kind of learning as I go, and it's easy to look back and say I should have done this and I should have done that, but that seemed like the decision I made seemed like the right one at the time, and so I'll stand by it at this point.
Because of you know, because it was 2020. I mean, from you know the one that story to me, reading it, you know, and I didn't even know it until I read the book.
Right.
You may have told it to me right before the book. I'm not really sure, but I mean, that story to me was like so bad, because it was like, to me, it's like, you always like, whenever you go to the media, they always, you know, and I would be as guilty as anyone. You have your frame of reference and you write your story, but to me, you have to be honest with, you know, honest at least with the feelings of the people who are, you know, like when you put your, you know what I mean. And to me, that was blatant dishonesty.
Yeah.
Which, for people who don't know what the story is he did a comment. They were doing a story on backyard wrestling, and they interviewed Mick, and they showed him a clip of relatively tame backyard wrestling. He said, you know, it just looks like kids having fun. And they showed him another clip of not tame backyard wrestling, and he said something else. And they used his, oh, that looks like fun, to, you know, something that looked pretty dangerous. And I mean, what do people like in the media when they hear that? Because to me, that was a hell of an indictment for a very dishonest, you know, part of the piece. You know, how do you have credibility with that show?
Yeah,
and it makes you question every other thing that they report and do a piece on.
Exactly. We mean Bryan talked about that.
I brought up the point that, you know, I was actually prepared, you know, for trick questions and looking for traps, which is why I prefaced my comment about the first piece of footage by saying, now, I was expecting worse than this, and I have a feeling you're going to show me worse than this in a few minutes, aren't you? And they all nodded their heads. And then I said, but this didn't look that bad. So I was specifically looking for it. You know, it was almost, I can't say that I was consciously thinking, okay, I'm not going to let them take a soundbite out of context, but you're always worried about sound bites, because they can take a story and make it whatever they want to be. I mean, just for example, the fact that I think I do tell both sides of the WWF story, meaning that I don't, you know, I'm not going to let us off the hook for using the term "suck it," because, you know, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of inexcusable, even if I did say it like twice in '98. But if somebody wanted to do sound bites, they could just show me going, "Hey, there's no excuse for suck it," and that would be it. You know, it'd be just like me giving an indictment on the WWF instead of a balanced argument. And I was ready for that, but I just never guessed that they were allowed to do that. And I think looking back on it, you know, I asked one of the WWF people, and I don't mean to put down the WWF PR department, but maybe I should have gotten a second opinion when I said, are they allowed to do that? And the guy goes, well, yeah, it's an accepted form of reporting. I probably should have checked into that.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, I think it is. And even one of their people told me, yeah, you know, this didn't come from me, but, geez, you could have had some kind of, you know, legal issue there. And I'll tell you what, I wish I had, not to make money off it, but just to get 2020 on national television to take back what they said, because they do owe that to the public. And I'm waiting for some kind of response. And a matter of fact, we did get a response from 2020, but they were asking the publicist at HarperCollins if they could do a piece on me.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
they did the piece on you last year, because I remember that piece.
I know, but they called again to do one and about the book, and the publishers were like, "Are you sure you want to do a piece?" And I was like, "No, it'll be a positive piece." And they're like, "No, I mean, are you sure? Have you read what he wrote about your show?" And she goes, "I'll tell you when I'll send you a book." But I think at this point, I'd have to be kind of foolish to do something with 2020, even though I'm trusting ABC, and you know. Who knows? Maybe if, and you hate to be like an editor or a director saying I've got final cut, but I would really need some kind of assurance that things wouldn't be taken out of context.
Okay, Mick Foley actually is on his way to the airport for the phone that was set up. He was caught in traffic, so he's going to be back up in about 5 to 10 minutes or so. So we are going to talk about some wrestling stuff until we get him back. So a couple of changes in the 0-1 card. Nathan Jones and John Heidenreich are out.
WWF?
I would presume that's WWF. I would presume strongly, and it would be Samoa Joe and Keiji Sakota in, which is a big difference. So anyway, that's the story there. And let's see. This is more stuff. The Turner South thing was on. It was not on TBS. It was on Turner. I mean, the Wrestling Classics show was on Monday night on Turner South during a rain delay. It was not during the. It was not on whatever. It was not on TBS. Okay, just to get that clear. Got an email about that. And it's from Rob in London. I should also mention that One Wrestling has reported that Rob Van Dam has signed with WWF, which is something that we had pretty much. I mean, it was pretty much a given that was going to happen. And I'm assuming he'll be with WCW, with the WCW thing when that gets going. I'm assuming that one all along. This from Robin London goes, am I right in saying the WCW TV deal has fallen through?
What exactly does fallen through mean? They had no deal.
The 11 to 1 a.m. slot on TNN looks very doubtful. So he goes, why don't they just make Heat or Metal and Jacked or both into WCW shows? Problem is if they make it Metal and Jacked, it's going to be such a drop that it's not even worth almost doing. As far as Heat, if they could get a 2-hour
also, shows
Heat,
are syndicated.
Right? Well, that's why. Yeah, Metal and Jacked. Now the Heat, as far as if they could get a 2-hour Heat on Sunday night, like from 6 to 8, or some time slot like that, and MTV would go for it, I think that'd be a great move. But I don't think that that's happening because it hasn't even been discussed. So,
something that bothered me this past Monday was I actually saw one of the commercials for Raw, and it was a TNN Pop commercial, and they were talking about the top 10 shows on the network, and number 1 was WWF, and the other 9 were shows that maybe some of you enjoy, but I don't know how anybody can enjoy them.
Oh, Arena Football and all that? Yeah, I've seen that commercial.
The Rockford Files, WKRP in Cincinnati, and I'm thinking, you can't get Nitro on this network, but you're getting WKRP in Cincinnati, and the Dukes of Hazzard, and the Rockford Files. How can that be?
I'll tell you what,
because they don't want to be the wrestling network?
Yeah, well, that's why. But I was looking last night at the cable ratings, for the month of May, and it was just amazing to me that, of the top 10 networks in cable, and TNN has now cracked the top 10, only because of Raw. You take Raw out, and they probably drop to about number 20. And that's not an exaggeration either, because it's the difference. It's the difference between the 4 Raw shows that aired during May, and they were the 4 lowest, rated Raw shows in a while, basically, or 4 of the lower rated. The last 2 have been the 2 lowest rated in years. But those 4 shows brought the TNN average from 0.45 up to 0.9. I mean, 0.53 up to 0.9. I take that back. Don't want to make that mistake. Horrible mistake there. But it's basically that's what those 4 shows make the difference in prime time of WWF. And of the top 10 networks, I think A&E was equal. TNN was up, obviously, because of Raw, and the other 8 were all down, and most of them, I think 7 of those 8 were down pretty significantly. And I'm thinking that, every cable network is down in ratings from last May, okay, because it's compared May to May. And wrestling is the highest rated show on cable, okay, and it's the only network that's up is up only because of wrestling. It has nothing to do with anything else.
And the thing that I always wonder is,
why does nobody else want wrestling? And I mean, they really don't, because people are out there wanting to get wrestling on real bad. So I mean, I know why.
The thing I'm wondering is just, can network executives at TNN? I just cannot comprehend them sitting there and going, ever since we did this pop campaign, our ratings have skyrocketed. I cannot see them doing that. I mean, if it's their job to know these things, they've got to take WWF out and look what the rating would be without it. They can't just be sitting there going, it's got to be this pop campaign.
Their press releases say that,
Huh?
Anyway. Those press releases, you've read them, haven't you?
I know. I read them, and it disturbs me.
Ever since we started,
they can't in their heart believe that. That's what I'm saying here. There's no way.
No, they can't in their heart believe that. You're right. And so they should never say it. I mean, if you don't believe it in your heart, you should never say it. This is from Sherilyn, who goes, I want your input regarding Brian Lawler's termination. Why is it the WWF gave a few opportunities to Road Dogg, but not Grandmaster Sexay? It looks prejudicial to me. Because Road Dogg wasn't arrested and Grandmaster Sexay was. And I think that's the difference. And they've got they're not too keen on their wrestlers getting arrested. I mean, that's the reality, and they're not. And as far as like Road Dogg, Road Dogg
especially heels and baby faces in the same car.
Yeah. Well, last night they weren't, unless Brian Christopher or Brian Lawler's sort of a heel and a baby face at the same time anyway, isn't he?
That's right. He was in the car with himself.
But as far as I don't know. I mean, it's not the same thing. He was arrested. Road Dogg was fired too, but he was put in rehab. But I think he asked to go to rehab. I mean, if Brian Lawler had gone a week ago to Vince McMahon and goes, Vince, I got a problem. I need to go to rehab to straighten out. I think Vince McMahon, there's no way Vince McMahon, I don't say no way because I don't speak for Vince McMahon. I don't believe Vince McMahon would fire him. But to get busted now, I think that, especially bringing in all these guys with questionable backgrounds, that
may have been one of the reasons why too, to send a message.
They got to send they got to send a message that, like, some of these guys that they're bringing in that have a history. It's like, okay, you get arrested, buddy. We're not putting up with it. We'll give everybody a chance, and you know what, they should. I mean, there's a couple of guys that they are talking to and going to sign that I really wouldn't, just because of their behavior in WCW. And I'm sorry, but I can't. You can blame WCW all you want for a lot of things, but some guys, first of all, some of these guys had problems after they left WCW. They had problems before they got to WCW, so they can't blame WCW for their problems. And other guys did things that I don't care how, how bad working in WCW was, and it was. Some things are just ridiculously unprofessional, and to me, I wouldn't hire those guys. But the fact is, they need star power, and they're in trouble. I don't want to say they're in trouble, but this WCW thing better get off the right foot. So I'm not saying that, put it this way, as I've written before, all the standards in the last 7 weeks have totally changed. But still, because they've changed and because they're giving guys a chance, they do have to send a message that, if you're going to get popped, you really do lose your job, and that's it, and that's the deal. And these guys better, so you're right, that may be part of it. Let's see. This goes, I was watching Kawada versus Misawa from, I think, 1999. Kawada does a move which can only be called a reverse tombstone and drops Misawa on his head. How is he not dead? That's the famous Gonzo bomb.
That's a very good question.
After that happened, I asked someone that exact question, and that was in that company, and they just said, there's only 3 people in the world who could do that and not kill each other, and those were 2 of the 3 right there. They can just do it.
Yeah.
That's what they said. What's happening with Norman Smiley? He's waiting until his contract is with Time Warner expires, which is very soon, only in a couple weeks, and then he's probably going to be going back to EMLL, which he should, because when I was looking at that EMLL, the main events from 10 years ago, I mean, there was black magic, so they need to get another
back to his roots.
Yep. Pride Grand Prix opening round, Pride 9, and Pride 11 have all been released in the U.S. on VHS or DVD. In fact, these were all released on last Tuesday. So there's 3 new Prides out there, along with the 2 existing ones. So that answers that question. It's from Terry, who goes, did Raw have 5.44 million viewers or 5.44 million homes? 5.44 million viewers. How the hell does Nielsen come up with such accurate numbers? Call Nielsen. Don't ask me. Would you bring in Trent Acid or the Briscoe brothers for the new WCW? Well, I wouldn't bring in the Briscoe brothers because they're underage and they won't be able to get licensed in any state where you got to get licensed in, because they're 16 and 17. And Trent Acid, I would give him a look. He's a pretty talented guy. I mean, I don't know if I would sign him for a contract, but this is from Harvey, who goes, Pride 10 is also out on video release in the United States already. Okay. So, wait a minute now. Okay, it's Pride 9/11, so 10 has already been out. Okay. Do you think Francine will end up in WWF or WCW? I don't know. What do you think? I don't think she's going to end up in either one.
I wouldn't think so, but we've seen some names contacted and actually signed in the last couple of days that I didn't think were going to be there, so who knows?
Yeah. This is from Scott, who goes, I just watched the Minoru Tanaka-Takahiro Murahama match, and I must say it's the best match of the year 2001. It's up there, boy. It's an awesome match. Great mat work, stiff kicks, very good crowd heat, made this one of the best junior heavyweight matches in a long time. Murahama is fast becoming one of my favorite workers and one of the best in the world, and of course Minoru Tanaka is second to none. What did you think of the match? Match of the year quality? Yes, absolutely. I thought it was the best match in Japan, and up there from a technical standpoint, I think it was the best match, technical wrestling, best match of the year. Yeah, I would say that. Sorry if I've missed this on past shows, but why is Buff Bagwell now being talked about as one of the new headliners of WCW? What has changed in the last few weeks? The ratings. I was under the impression both he and Lex Luger were toast.
More than the ratings. Business in general.
Yeah. That's the answer. It's a different business than it was 7 weeks ago. I've enjoyed this from Casey.
Just look at God, how long ago was that? 2 months ago? Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger going out with O'Hare and Palumbo.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You know, laying down. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was bad.
Just think of that day. People were calling in that day and probably going, or probably about a week later, and just saying, "Do you think that Bagwell and Lou are going to be in?" And we were just going, "No, absolutely not. There's no way in hell." And now here it is, and it's happening.
I know. That's what business going down does. You know, that's what kept Bruiser Brody alive for so long in this business. From Casey Trowbridge, who goes, I've enjoyed the WF product the last couple of weeks and was glad to see Lance Storm. But given the WF's rut up until last week, something crossed my mind that frightens me. The stalker of Undertaker's wife. I'm worried that it's Kane. I never want to see Kane wrestle Undertaker again, especially with no justifiable reason. Please tell me it's not Kane. I cannot tell you anything.
There'd be a justifiable reason. He likes his wife.
I was just wondering, once WCW finally gets relaunched, who will be making the decisions to hire new writers? Will it be Stephanie McMahon and the other WF writers, or will it be Jim Ross? It'll be Kevin Dunn, I believe, is the one who's in charge of those decisions. Not Stephanie McMahon has input. Jim Ross, I don't think has. I don't want to say he has no input, but he is pretty much, his side is the talent side, the writing side. The talent, the referees, the road agents, that's Jim Ross's department. The production, and the writing, that's pretty much Kevin Dunn's side. I want to ask you real quick. Yesterday, I guess it was, or maybe the day before, you did a USA Today chat, and actually one of the questions that we've had brought up several times is what you wrote about Ric Flair in the first book. And you actually took some of it out. But basically, what are your, obviously, you have your issues with Ric Flair, and just kind of explain them to everybody.
Well, I think I tried to make it clear in the first book that nothing I said concerned his ring performances. Like the question the guy said was, I want to congratulate you on turning your so-so career into something fairly impressive in the last couple of years. But why would you want to blast Ric Flair, a guy who single-handedly sold out arenas throughout the Southeast? And I was like, well, maybe my career was so-so compared to Flair's, but, I think, it stands up on its own pretty well. And I said, hey, I didn't blast Flair as a performer, but I think that I am definitely not alone in thinking that he didn't do a whole lot for the younger guys, especially guys that people that were readily acknowledged as being talented. And I mean, that's, including, Austin, including Triple H. I just think that Flair was way too smart to know that to not know that I could have helped that company, and he chose not to, so.
But there was, Flair had periods where he was in power, but there were periods where Flair was out of power and they didn't, there were other people.
I'm talking specifically about the periods that he was in power, and he was the booker when I lost the ear, and to not be able to see that as a potential gold mine, and just kind of, and to have the only rematch between me and Vader take place at a Sunday matinee at a 1,500 seat theater in South Carolina, Ric Flair's too smart for that, and I personally felt like he knew that he could have done something with me and chose not to. And I said the positive thing about writing it is like I got all that out. And so when I said it's too bad he hates my guts now, that is kind of a shame. And for somewhere to say how does my career stack up to Flair's, obviously, Flair was the better performer for a longer period of time. But I think if people said, who was the better person, I think that I'd get a lot more votes than the Nature Boy would.
Okay. Let's start with phone calls. We're going to start with Ed in Texas. Ed, what's up?
Yeah, hi, guys. I just want to say, first off, an honor to talk to you, Mick. I'm a big fan of yours. I followed your career for quite a long time. And my first question for you is about the Mind Games match with Shawn Michaels.
Right.
There's a point in the match where he wants to throw you in the corner, but you didn't go, and it looked like he yelled at you, and he tried to go.
You know, you sound like Tommy Dreamer asking me. He was like, "Why didn't you just knock Michaels on his head?"
Well, that's my question, because a minute later you did throw a forearm, and it did look like you knocked the living crap out of him.
Yeah, you know, that was because Sean had a reputation for getting mad at guys he worked with. That was really just something he and I came up with to have a little fun and to try to make people think, "Oh."
Oh, really? Y'all worked that really good, because I swore I thought you just knocked the crap out of him.
I should have given you the other answer, because I did come out of that scenario knocking him down. So, but no, that's something he and I came up with.
Okay. And another question I have is, when I bought your first book, I was real excited to read about the first time that I had ever seen you, but it wasn't in the book, and I was kind of wondering why you left out I believe it was the Super Clash.
The Super Clash. I'll tell you, there are two reasons. One is that didn't stand out in my mind as being like a clear highlight, getting my 3 minutes in with the Guerreros. And the second thing is, to be quite honest with you, I wrote in this book how the first book was written backwards. I went from 91 all the way to the end, and then I picked up the pieces in 83. So quite honestly, by the time I got to, late 88, I was pretty much running out of time and gas. So I really did breeze over like Continental and Memphis and Dallas, and even my independent era of 90 and 91 was breezed over. But okay. I don't look at that as being one of my all-time high water marks.
Okay. I was wondering, were you even tagged into the match?
Yeah, I got in that match.
Because, I remember you taking like a bump or two, but I don't actually remember you being tagged in. I was kind of disappointed in that, because I had heard about you, and I was excited to see you, but I was...
He was in the ring illegally.
Well, is anyone there?
How did we lose?
Hello?
Ed, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, we lost Mick.
We lost Mick. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and let you guys go then, so you can try and get Mick back on.
Okay. All right. We'll have... Okay, well, Mick up in a second. Let's see. Well, we've got a question for Brian here from Ivan, who goes, how old are you, and did it ever cross your mind to go to OVW or UPW? You seem to have a great mind for the business, and maybe with some training you could make it in the business. That's not your goal.
I have no desire to make it in the business.
I guess that's the answer. Let's see. If WCW gets off the ground, do you think Al Snow should be considered as an announcer?
Oh, we got to get Mick back on for that one.
I guess you're right. Okay, well, we will do that one. Let's see. Do you think there's anyone in wrestling who had a better physique than Rick Rude in his prime? It depends on what you consider. It depends
on what you're looking for in a physique.
I mean, from a bodybuilding standpoint.
You just look at like Steiner.
Yeah, from a bodybuilding standpoint, Scott Steiner or superstar Billy Graham when he was trained down, Tony Atlas, even though he didn't really have the legs. But there's other kinds of like great physiques, athletic physiques and stuff like that. I wouldn't say Rick
Shawn Michaels had a hell of a physique when he was really dieting down and
he had a good
on the protein
physique.
Shakes, but a totally different physique than like a Scott Steiner.
Hey guys.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll have Mick on in a couple of minutes. He's in the room. He's trying to find the phone that he needs to get on with us. They had set up a conference room for him to get on the phone. His cell phone is starting to crap out a little bit, so I'm gonna give him a ring back in about 5 minutes. We'll have him up.
Okay, well then we'll go to some more of this. We won't take phone calls because almost every phone call's for Mick anyway. Was there any exceptionally built wrestler who was not on steroids? I'm sure there are some. The only one that I would say that I would say that I believe has never taken steroids, and again, like I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Who's got a really good physique is Lance Storm. I don't know. Is there anyone else like the Brian that you would come up with where you go like? He's not, you know what I mean? I'm sure he's not the only one, because you can get a good physique without taking steroids. It's not easy to maintain it on the road, but it can be done. Guys, there were plenty of guys in wrestling in the 50s and 60s when there were not steroids available that had some pretty darn impressive physique, so I know it can be done. But, it's the minority of the guys with good physiques, though, for sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we went through a list of guys. I think we could come up with a couple, but it's not like, the majority of them we go, yeah, he could probably do it.
Okay. This is from Ben Miller. Actually, we got a bunch of UPW emails. Anyway, Hashimoto and his entourage and Rick Bassman came out to hype the 0-1 pay-per-view on June 14th. Is that a pay-per-view? I mean, God, that's going to bomb.
They can't put it on pay-per-view. There's no way.
All the other 0-1 shows have been on pay-per-view. Rick Bassman talked about respect, then Samoa Joe came out and ran down Japanese guys. including one eyes half closed comment. Hashimoto then ripped the fans after Samoa went backstage. Horseshoe came out and Hoshikawa attacked him and they started the match. They beat down Horseshoe after he submitted to Hoshikawa, and Tom Howard came out for a pull apart. Hashimoto was really, really over. Good for
Hashimoto
him.
ripped apart the fans?
I guess he must have been the heel. I don't know. I got a couple. See if there's any more UPWs. There's someone who said that they didn't like the show in here somewhere. Don't see it right here. Here we go. Bassman 01 thing was the announcement that UPW was the exclusive provider of talent to 01 and to introduce Samoa Joe as one of the people going to the 01 show. Joe cut a heel promo on Japanese wrestling and left. It was a little confusing. This riled up the 01 wrestlers a lot. Then Horseshoe came out and challenged one of the guys, which was Hoshikawa, to a match. So I guess that's...
We have Mick Foley back.
We got Mick back. Okay, Mick, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. I think this is permanent for now.
Okay,
hopefully until I have to go. But you know what? Let me get something off my chest, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This might be a little controversial, but I'm going to call you on this statement you made.
Okay.
What did you mean when you said those Thanksgiving skits on SmackDown were horrible?
You mean the thing when they did the food fight stuff?
Yeah, the food fight. You didn't
With
think
Deborah?
Oh God!
I just saw that, and I read that, and I'm like, you know what? I think he means the good kind of horrible.
Some of it was the good kind. Some of it was a little.
It was so stupid, and I enjoyed it, but I'm not going to defend it. It was horrible, but just to be able to look at the Dudleys and go, "Bubba, get the dumplings," was I consider a much bigger part of my career than the Super Clash 3 was.
And I got a question because I mentioned this in the article, and what are your thoughts as far as the changing landscape of wrestling? With WCW out, or being off the Turner stations. ECW being out and really one game in town, and do you think that's good? I mean, it's kind of led to a lull right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. I don't think you can. It's like if you have a guy running a race, obviously he's not going to run quite as fast if nobody's chasing him. So I think that when the WCW show was at its peak was probably when we were at our best, and really probably over the last year when WCW has stopped being a real factor, we have resorted to a little bit of coasting, and I just wasn't a real big fan of the last 3 months, even though I have enjoyed the last couple of Raws.
I remember you were talking in your conference call about elevation, and someone asked, who could be elevated through that glass ceiling? And you were like, I don't even know who would be.
Yeah.
And ended up they chose Benoit and Jericho, and it's been pretty successful.
I would have thought, and this isn't a knock on Jericho at all as a wrestler or a person, but I thought that, that he was, I didn't think the fans were going to respond to him in the way they did that quickly. It wasn't like he was groomed and pushed slowly up the ladder and then given the spot. I mean, he came out and he did the promo in Austin, and people really ate it up. And it was probably fortunate that the next day was in Calgary. And I think even the most casual fan had to have understood that they were watching something special during that tag team match. And probably that match was just so good that it elevated him well beyond what a good push would have over a long period. Oh, I don't know if you can say that, but it did a lot to help him quickly. And
I think part of it, I don't know if it's just so much the people that write to us, but, for months and months and months, it's like people have just been dying to see Jericho in that position, and they've just never got it. He's doing a job, or he's putting somebody over, or whatever, and they finally got it, and, it's like they wanted it for so long, and there it was.
Yeah, I mean, I hate for people to think like that Jericho is, was a failure in WWF because he couldn't crack like the top 5, because, you're looking at a pretty exclusive group up there. Not saying that he shouldn't have been up there, but, I mean, the guy, was probably making a lot of money and was having some great matches, in the Benoit feud. But I would have thought that he wouldn't have been able to break out that quickly. And hopefully, if this pay-per-view doesn't set the world on fire, hopefully they won't. With the WCW, the old WCW, that I was a part of, they would have just wrote a guy off if he didn't, set the world on fire in his one big chance. And I documented in the first book how I thought that, some of the things were almost planned to fail so they could say, we tried to do something with the guy and didn't work out. But, Vince, I think, has a lot of faith in Jericho, so hopefully if this one doesn't, really bump up the buy rate, hopefully they won't write him off. I mean, he's just too good to do that, too.
By the way, did you get a thing? I know June 4th, New York Times, you're still going to be #1. Did you get anything about June 11th yet?
Yeah, it's going to drop down a little bit, and I'm really not that concerned. I mean, I'm concerned, it might never get up there again. But to me, I mean, I'm kind of a history buff, and there's some really good books up there, and the new John Adams book, which is by a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it's been really highly anticipated and very well reviewed, as just like gone nuts. And the Tom Brokaw book, with the Memorial Day, and another really good World War II book called Ghost Soldiers, beat it. So I came in 4th, but I still placed ahead of the ones that I had beaten out. So it may just be maybe I've seen #1 for the last time, or I might get a bump. But really, what will make the book successful in the long run is if it stays up there and if it sells steadily. And I'm kind of hoping to get back on the show and to do what we did.
Hit someone with the book again?
I don't know about hit someone with the book, but I do have a plan to make the book part of the show, and it's a fun idea, and I think it's a good idea. And really, the other factor is I think it would help put some focus on WCW if they go along with my plan.
Looking back, some of the things that were done to promote that book, just hitting people with it, having it be, that part of the angle with The Rock. I mean, some of that stuff was brilliant as far as just selling it.
It was groundbreaking. And we had the edge because it's not like, I always use the Kelsey Grammer as an example. And Dave, this might even be your example, but it's not like he can go on the Fraser show to plug a Kelsey Grammer book, And I was able to do that, and they didn't really do that with Rock's book or China's book. So it was, I think, even though people know my book is out there, the wrestling fans, and hopefully they know it's pretty good, it's kind of like having a matchup between, say, like the Rock and Triple H. People know it's going to be good, but they're not going to order it unless you really, put some promotion behind it. So I'd like to see it be made part of the storyline.
Okay, as far as, do you have a kind of a timetable of when you're going to be returning to television, like as a regular character?
I'd like to return pretty soon, just simply because, I mean, from a selfish standpoint, it's going to help my book. But I really think if they need a little bit of levity in there, and they're doing it. But I think not only was I good for the levity, but I helped get the storylines over. And when I talked about WCW, I'd like to be the guy that kind of like makes that group seem important. And
somebody needs too bad.
What?
Somebody needs too bad.
I don't think Shane did WCW any favors by doing the dance routine out there. I don't know what was going through his head, or with that, when he was talking about the planets and the world, and he started naming Mars, I thought he was going for the obvious Uranus punchline.
That's what I thought too.
And the main thing is, it wasn't like he just walked in on like a so-so routine. I mean, I was looking at Kurt Angle up there, and I was saying to my wife, "You see," I said, "the people want to see this. This is." I mean, that was just tremendous. The whole Angle metal reenactment.
Mm-hmm. Also, has anyone talked to you about? Because we talk about this on the show like all the time. When it comes to being basically an upfront person for the WWF, a spokesperson, like when it comes to talk shows and things like that, as the guy. I don't know if to defend wrestling, but to let's say intelligently discuss wrestling when it comes to going on shows and everything, because you know the stuff right off the top of your head, and you're rather than someone who I mean, like, I don't want to knock Vince, but I guess I'm going to, where Vince got real emotional sometimes, or sometimes in the case of Linda, who's great on the business shows, it's kind of dry when it comes to a regular show.
Yeah, well, I think that was, part of the reason I did do the epilogue. I mean, obviously I felt, I had real strong feelings about it, but I asked WWF, after it was done, can I do these hard news shows? And they tended not to let the guys do that, but they made the decision that they would allow me. And, it's a shame that we didn't have more time this Weekly World News, because the correspondent was a nice guy, and he said, honestly, I disagree with you on some points, but, you present a good argument. And he wasn't, I don't mind tough questions at all. I do mind unfair questions. And he was tough, but very fair. And it is a shame that because they're going to edit out a lot of good stuff that I think would have at least made people think. And I want to make it clear, like, I actually got a call from Lieberman's office today.
Really?
Yeah, they were getting back to me to let me know they hadn't forgotten about me, but that, with the Senator Lefferts jumping ship and kind of disrupting the whole Democratic-Republican system, that really my book wasn't the number one priority. But I said to the reporter, I said, I want to make it clear that I don't have anything against people who don't like our show or who disagree with it, or even if Lieberman wants to see it put to, it wants to, take measures against it. But you can't do it, with a guy like Brent Bozella, whose MO since the early 80s has been to run smear campaigns, and you can't do it by, by telling half-truths and lies and by, exaggerating the number of sponsors who jump ship, and especially that whole Lionel Tate thing. I mean, you guys have probably been over and over it, but I know WWF sent their lawyers a letter saying they wanted a retraction. And, I read the letter. It was very obvious what they wanted. Every written statement, pertaining to the Lionel Tate case, every letter of solicitation, they wanted retractions. And the PTC lawyer wrote back and said, we have no idea what you're talking about or what kind of retraction you want. I'm like, look, I don't even understand legalese, but I understood that letter. But, yeah, in answer to your question, I would love to take that on, and I was hoping, and I understand that, some of these shows that I want to do are not going to bump book sales, but to me, it's just as important, if not more important, to kind of, stick up for the company as it is to sell a lot of books.
We want to get to as many calls as we can, so let's go to Frank, and everyone just maybe make one or two quick questions because we want to get to as many people as possible, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
How's it going, guys? Mick,
hey.
True honor and privilege to talk to a legend tonight, but you speak very highly of Shane Douglas in both books,
right?
Being a good friend of yours and the guy you train with. In your opinion, do you think he burned too many bridges with Vince McMahon, even Paul Heyman, to even think about coming back to WWF or WCW?
I would have thought he had burnt that WCW bridge, and that wasn't true. I used to talk to Shane and about it, and he said he thought that's what people expected of him and what people wanted, and that he would deliver the truth. And it was like when he came, he blasted WCW, and then he came, and then he went to WWF, and he came back, after a very quick, unsuccessful tenure as Dean Douglas there. And when he started blasting him again, I said, Shane, it may have come across like, hard-hitting truth then, but it just seems kind of like sour grapes now. But, I don't know. WCW at that point was really trying to, connect with the Internet fans who were really into this feud he had with Flair. But, I think that, I think the results showed that really people didn't really know about it and didn't really care. So I think that's why he got the WCW gig. I think Vince sometimes I mention does things just to be nice, as far as hiring questionable talent. But I would be real surprised if he brought Shane in, to tell you the truth.
Okay, let's go to Hamad. Hamad, you're up.
Harant.
Yes, hey guys, thanks for having me on. I love the show.
Thank you.
First question for Mick. One of my favorite promos that I've seen were the early feud with you and Tommy Dreamer in ECW.
Right.
Just that whole series of promos. It was like just not only were they great promos, it was like just getting every single point of the angle over. And just
thanks. Yeah. Okay.
Question was Paulie involved in that? Because I just have this mental image of you guys in Paulie's basement just working out.
No, Paulie had a lot of input with a lot of the guys. But he just sat back and watched it, and that was the first time I was like bashing, I was bashing ECW, and I really, I believed in what I was saying, and Paulie loved it. But I will tell you what he did have a lot of input in was it was one, didn't get as much attention. It was the one where I was like flossing my teeth with the cable,
I know the way you're talking about.
Yeah, and I was eating the watercress salad sandwich, and we had to keep doing takes over and over because I kept laughing so damn hard, and that was Paulie. I'd be like, what's the wimpiest possible food that someone could eat? And Paulie'd be like, a watercress sandwich. And I'll say this, it might break Todd Gordon's heart. I don't know if he listens or not. But when I was trying to come across, I was like trying to come across as annoying as possible, and Paulie was like, just think, Todd Gordon, hey buddy, and every time I went to cut that promo, I kept thinking of poor Todd, and every time I would see Todd after that, I went in his office one time and couldn't stop laughing because I kept thinking of Paulie doing the Todd interview. But yeah, he was very helpful, but not necessarily in those interviews.
Okay, let's go to Wes. Okay, Wes, what's up?
Hey guys, Mick, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks.
Wanted to ask you in regards to last Thursday's match, just looking at the future of the business on SmackDown with the TLC. You know, we certainly don't want to see guys leaving in their mid-30s like yourself. Do you think that that's going to be the future with, you know, such a hard style in a lot of matches, or do you think that might change down the road, or where do you?
I think they just wanted to make a statement with that match to get people's attention and get people talking about the shows, because I mean, with you know, the Survivor doing the huge ratings, and even the Jennifer Aniston Kiss episode on Friends, which actually didn't do that well.
Sucked.
I didn't see it. I would have liked to have seen it, but you know, I guess people aren't talking about the show. You know, Rock has left, and the, you know, obviously the ratings are down a little bit, and I think they just wanted to get people talking about it again. And you know what? I ended up seeing Vince the day after that. I didn't even mean to, but I was in the office doing the Fanatic series with the coach, and Vince's assistant saw me. He goes, "Oh, let me tell Vince you're here." So I went in unannounced, and Vince and I talked for like an hour and a half, and he explained why they did it. And you know, not only we have a very powerful, very productive talk, but I, you know, I understood, and he had told me they were going to do the sexual comedy, and he wanted to get my feedback on it, you know, because he knows sometimes I'm against the outwardly sexual stuff. So.
You know, as far as your injuries, you know, like the TLC match and everything like that, it's a lot of big bumps down to the ring and through tables and that sort of thing. But you had like the Vader power bomb on the cement and the Hell in the Cell off the cage to the table.
Right.
And do you think it was bumps like that really took years off your career, or was it the type of things that they did in Hell in the Cell, like through tables and things like that?
No, I think it was, in my case, it was, you know, just bump after bump after bump. I don't think like the repetitive elbows off the ring apron, you know, especially in the small towns, you know, in Texas and Tennessee and Alabama, did me a whole lot of favors. They just jarred me over and over and over again. And I do think, you know, a match like Hell in the Cell probably took a lot out of me. You know, those two bumps back to back. You know, I have no way of proving it, but it seemed like it did. And then, you know, like I said on TV that the I Quit match may have been the one that, you know, where I kind of lost the love for performing. So, you know, emotionally, that one may have done it, but I think the other one was just repetitive, what I called high impact style instead of high risk. I mean, I did take some risks, but a lot of it was just calculated impact, you know, over and over and over again. So hopefully they won't make those guys do those type of matches very often. And I think for their sake, the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian, it's important that they don't get painted into that corner where that's what fans expect of them, because that's like a death sentence there.
Yeah. Maybe you could give a short speech to backyard wrestlers, because I know we have a lot of them listening.
Oh, do you? Now, guys,
yes.
I know that you're not going to listen. Seriously, you want me to talk to them?
Sure. I loved the stuff you wrote in the book about that, and I also liked. We talked about this when you were on with on that one talk show.
Yeah.
Not all that long ago, and I liked how you handled it, because that term backyard wrestling, you know, always bothers me, because I don't know what percentage, but probably a good percentage of people who do backyard wrestling don't do anything any worse than any of us ever did playing football or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's that small percentage that, like, you know, that gets in the media attention. That's, you know, not good for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to go on Lisa Gibbons and show a bunch of kids pretending to hit each other in the backyard, because that's not good for ratings. I mean, they're obviously going to show the much more visually, you know, impressive stuff, which can be real dangerous. I mean, and you know, I don't even want to say, hey, these injuries like with thumbtacks and glass usually aren't that serious, because that kind of sounds like I'm trivializing it and advocating it, and I'm not. And I mean, I know some guys will say, how can Mick say that, because, you know, he was the guy that dove off the roof. But the truth is, you know, that was a film. I don't know if that makes any difference. It's not like I was out there over and over and over again in the backyard, but really, I mean, what you didn't see in that footage, I mean, I did the one roof jump, but the rest of it was just so ridiculously harmless. It was the flying fingertips, you know, to the head, and the palm thrust, and the elbow missing by miles. And I'll tell you, you know, the part of the fun of it was giving the guy like the really bad looking backbreaker, and having my buddy off camera breaking a stick, and then having the announcer, oh, he broke his back on that one. That's the fun of it. To me was just like, I have always, when I do commentary, not on the WWF, but like, if I'm doing commentary backstage or something, I always do the overblown Vince McMahon of the 80s. Oh my goodness, that's the fun of it to me. It wasn't trying to get hurt. And I just came up with this analogy today. It kind of reminds me of, there was a movie with Bobcat Goldthwait. I think it was called Clown. And it was about like the status system of the clown business, where the birthday party clowns picked on the mimes, but the birthday party clowns cowered and feared from the rodeo clowns, who were like the real, tough guys in the clown business. It kind of reminds me, like, the guys in the backyard doing the innocent stuff feel like, oh, geez, we're not real backyard wrestlers because we're not getting hurt. And I think it kind of puts pressure on them. I mean, I hate to jump around here, but, like, take the motorcycle helmet law. You've got to have a motorcycle helmet law, or else the guys wearing the helmets are going to feel like wimps for doing it. You know what I mean? So I just wish the media would stop paying attention to these guys and stop airing them, because it does give them a chance. And if it's you guys out there, I'll say it gives you guys a chance to be something the WWF will never let you be, and that's a star. And again, I know I jumped off a roof, but my goodness, I'd like to think I didn't have as much to do with people doing dumb things as this really irresponsibly marketed Best of Backyard Wrestling tape. I mean, it's a no-win situation, and I just don't see it getting any better as long as the media gives it attention. But for the
Mick,
sake
I know
of... go ahead. I got about 5 more minutes here.
Oh, you got 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
Al, can we go to Matt? Okay, Matt, come on.
Nice to be talking to you, Mick. Just a quick question. Are you going to do any book signings in the San Francisco Bay Area?
I don't think so. At one time, I know WWF has a show out there, don't they?
They don't. They canceled June 30th.
They did, but they don't anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was thinking of maybe going on the road.
Yeah, they got SummerSlam. That's true.
Oh, okay. SummerSlam is out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, San Jose.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing some book signings, of going on the road as like a referee. I know I'm going to do some refereeing or something in Toronto, because, live attendance is down, and not that I'm going to, pop the crowd by doing a referee appearance, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. And then I could have done that. But I don't know. You get to a certain point where after a while you're not really helping the book anymore. You're just providing a service for people who've already bought it. You know what I mean? I don't mean to sound mean, but it's like, geez, it's by the end, I did so many book signings last time, but by the end, we'd have a mob there, and you'd be like, all right, how many books do we sell? Like 100. I was like, I signed 700 books. They're like, yeah, I know. They bought them, at other places. So after the first 6 weeks or so, it just doesn't, make sense to do them.
What's your thoughts on the media now as a whole? I mean, and it's kind of unfair to to judge them, but like 70% good, 50% good, something like that.
As far as wrestling?
As far as fair treatment to you, or at least what you would call, even if it isn't positive, it's sort of like fair, or as compared to, let's say, unethical.
I would say, I tend to lump the media together in one big group. Just like I'm probably guilty of doing that, just like some people are guilty of lumping, wrestling or wrestlers together in one big group. I'm sure most of the people, do a good job, and I think very few people set out to do a hatchet job, but to me, there's no excuse for every newspaper that covered that Indiana University story to just print it as being fact without at least asking what was considered sex and what was considered simulated drug use. And that was the most shocking thing of all when I talked to Professor Gans, was to find out that no one even asked him about that. It was just reported as fact. So I think that the media as a whole is probably fairly accurate. And I just think that they feel like they don't have to do their homework quite as much when it comes to WWF or wrestling in general. And I bring up, Margaret Carlson. The thing that is so shocking about Margaret Carlson is that she does usually do such a good job, and that her essays in Time magazine are well thought out and well researched and well written. But when it came to wrestling, she obviously didn't feel like she had to know what she was, she didn't feel like she had to do her homework. And that's a sad indictment, of, I think, media's, apathy towards what we do.
I mean, I think at times it's, it works both ways too, though, in a sense that you know, and it's good and it's bad. It's bad in that when the stories are negative,
you're right.
It creates a groundswell from a lot of people who don't really investigate them.
Yes.
But also, there's those times where there are negative stories where I think that unless someone starts the ball rolling, everyone just sort of ignores it because it's wrestling too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, it does work both ways, even in promoting the book. Like, there's a lot of people who won't cover it because it's just a wrestler writing a book. But to be quite honest, the whole reason that World News Tonight was at my house is because I am a wrestler writing a book. You know, that's kind of the appeal to it, so I do get some attention because of that fact, and maybe as much as I get dissed because of the same reason.
Okay, Mick, I know you got to get going. I want to thank you very much for doing the show, and have good flight. And we'll be talking to you very soon.
And I want everyone, if they have a tape, to go back and watch that SmackDown episode of Thanksgiving, because I think it was some underrated character acting. And if you can try to see the fight backstage brawl brewing between the Cat and Brian Christopher, try to see, that you can actually see him sneaking up before his cue to dump the marinara sauce on him, which led to the backstage brawl when the cameras were off.
I got to ask one quick question before you go. What do you think, because someone wrote in, of Al Snow as an announcer for WCW?
I don't know if he's, I don't know what kind of announcer he'd be. I'll tell you what, though, I'm really happy for Al because, from what I've been told by Kevin Dunn, he said this Tough Enough is going to make Al a star. It's kind of like, he supposedly really does a great job with those kids. And not only that, but believe it or not, two different people in the world of motion pictures have gotten in touch with me about possibly having me and Al do a series of films together. And not like Mummy Return blockbusters, but like family movies. And I'm like, you see, all the making fun of him. If it does for Test, what it does for Al, Test will be indebted to me. And I'm also, you might want to start covering this. This could be the big news story. I've talked to Al, and Scotty Tuhati should be coming back. I spoke to him yesterday, and then I called Gary Davis. I'm trying to put together a team of WWF guys to break the Guinness Book of World Records for most roller coasters ridden in a 24-hour period. So I'm going to try to get some kind of charity behind it and, raise some money and have some fun in the meantime. So, listen, I got to run and catch this plane, but it's great talking to you guys.
Okay, good luck.
All right, bye.
We'll be talking to you soon. Okay. This is from Pat, who says, you said the Briscoe brothers wouldn't be legal, but didn't Davey Boy Smith and Rick Martel started around 16? And who are the younger guys? A lot of guys started... You see, it depends on... See, with the WWF, okay, what you're talking about with the WWF is that to go in that company, or WCW, you have to be able to be legal in pretty much all 50 states because commissions respect each other's rules, so to speak. So in most commission states, you got to be 18. I mean, Jeff Hardy was actually in the WWF and did some matches in the WWF when he was 17, but I think he lied about his age to get in. He must have, right? Remember we talked about that before. Yeah, but for them to go from town to town,
if you were in a non-commissioned state, I don't even think they would have asked.
I think you're not.
He would have had to lie to the WWF probably.
Yeah, I think the WWF kind of has a policy that you got to be 18. I think.
Yeah. Like in Canada, we have guys wrestling in Canada that are like 15 because there's no commission or anything up there.
That's right. No, there's a lot of places where guys are wrestling a lot younger. I know with the Briscoes is based on what I'm told.
In fact, Jacques Rougeau's kid is 12. He's going to have a match.
Wow, that's scary. Well, Davey's kid.
How about that?
Davey Boy Smith's kid was he had to have been 10 the first time I saw him wrestle.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, with the Briscoes, I think there are states that they're not allowed to wrestle, and there's other states that they are allowed to wrestle, depending upon what the commission rules are. Let's see, what's up with Super Crazy? He's working for Puerto Rico IWA. A lot of questions because the WWF has been interested in Bagwell regarding Jarrett. I'll tell you what about Jarrett, and I don't know. The last time I asked about Jarrett was 4 weeks ago, which might as well have been 4 years ago, the way wrestling changes. So I'll actually try to ask about that in the next couple of days. But the thing with Jarrett is that Jarrett actually did something. Okay, there's two things. One is there is a belief that Bagwell has a lot of charisma, and he does have some good charisma. Okay, I mean, nobody, it's like that thing where he gets a big pop and everything. Like Jarrett, the belief is doesn't have a lot of charisma, and even though Jarrett's a far superior worker to Bagwell, I think that there's a feeling that I think that in the WWF, a lot of people think that Jeff Jarrett does not have star power, but and he's not going to be happy underneath anyway, and we're not going to push him. And besides, there's I think Jim Ross and Vince McMahon aren't exactly thrilled with Jeff Jarrett anyway, so there's not that impetus like, oh my God, we need like 5 stars for this thing to get off. And Jeff Jarrett, I don't think they think is a big enough star anyway. So they may not be so hot. Then again, like I said, things changed a lot in the last month. And maybe they think, whereas with Bagwell, I think the thing is he's never done anything to us. He gets a big pop. He's got charisma. And maybe, we know how to make people stars that have charisma. So, maybe we'll give him a chance. And, and if he screws up, they can always fire him anyway, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's start hitting phone calls. We're going to go to Paul in California. Paul, what's up?
Hey, I had a few questions, actually. Did Mick, I know there was comparisons, did Mick ever fight Onita in Japan in any sort of death match?
I don't think so. I know that Mick did a couple of big matches in Japan, and I know he worked in FMW's Stadium show, but I think that was like during that period where Onita had retired. I don't remember an Onita Mick Foley singles match, but if there is one, I'm sure someone will email us to correct me. But okay. I don't remember one, and I think I would have.
Well, that's cool. I was just wondering. Also, do you think WCW or WWF will ever tap the Japanese market like Hayabusa or Masato Tanaka, bring them back?
Maybe a guy here and there. I mean, Paul Heyman's very high on Masato Tanaka.
How come no one's ever looked at Hayabusa, though?
He's pretty banged up.
Really?
Yeah, he's pretty banged up. And also, I mean, Paul Heyman looked at him. He brought him in. They brought him in that Hayabusa and Jinsei Shinzaki for a tag team.
Yeah.
Was it Van Dam and Sabu, I think, on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think it was Heatwave.
Yeah, so Heyman looks more international.
I think that they just have so many developmental guys in their own territories, and they have so many guys that, the Sean O'Hares and everyone they already have under contract, that I just think that they'll go through those guys first before they start looking overseas.
Well,
especially because no one there would know anybody, except Heyman.
I was also wondering, do you think, I don't know if you guys are going to ask this or not, that they should turn Undertaker heel and maybe make him face Benoit, be the big-name heel that Benoit could face, while Triple H is recovering and whatnot, even though I have a feeling Triple H is going to come back as a face?
I think Triple H should come back as a face.
Undertaker's one of those guys where,
I don't know.
He's probably on the tail end of his career. Why turn him heel,
But that could be the whole thing. Like, it's easier to be with McMahon than against him. And the whole Lord of Darkness thing, and
but
I think the Undertaker can have a Crippler crossface match or something like that.
If Undertaker was there to put Benoit over, and and it was kind of like his last stand, and he's going to put Benoit over, I mean, there's a benefit to Benoit for having that match, and Benoit's going to have a good match with him, I think. Benoit pretty much is going to have a good match with almost anyone.
It might just give him the whole Crippler motif to actually put Undertaker out of the business,
Yeah, I don't see him beating Undertaker with a crossface though.
And
I mean, they can do it. I just don't.
And especially putting him out.
I don't know. I don't think that they would. I think that there's like that feeling that they'd have so much respect for Undertaker they wouldn't even ask. Not that he would necessarily say no.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, wow, like you've been here for 10 years and this, and we want this guy who's a foot shorter than you beating you. It's not how they did business before, but you can always change. I don't know.
Well, I also want to tell you guys I'm a big fan of your show now. I've also been a wrestling fan for 20-plus years. They need to put one of those Nielsen boxes in my house because I never switch the show, no matter how bad it is. So
I don't either. I can't.
Yeah, people have to treat it like if you're a fan of the Raiders or the Patriots, whatever, you stick with the lean times or whatnot. It's the same thing. Everything gets better, and wrestling's the sport you love, so you got to stick with it.
Well, that's the hardcore fan credo, but the casual fans, they come in, like any other fad, they come and go, and right now, for whatever reason, they're leaving.
Well, I think that Tom Zink maybe was right a little bit in saying that he should let Paul E. just go over there and go crazy with WCW, because I do think Paul Heyman is a genius when it comes to the business, and it would be sort of like irony because he wanted to destroy WCW one time. So.
Paul, but I think Paul's going to have input, I think, in a WCW. I mean, they need a guy who's really open. One thing that Paul's good at is Paul's good at finding strengths in characters and
hiding weaknesses.
hiding weaknesses, which is real important with these WCW guys, and also in cultivating and developing new talent, and that's what they're going to need to do. I mean, they've got a lot of guys there that do have potential, but if they're used wrong, I mean, look at Mike Awesome in ECW and Mike Awesome in WCW. I mean, you know, he was so much more effective in ECW, and that's because of the difference between Paul and whoever was running the show in WCW. Because it's the same guy.
And for those of us that were benefited enough to see him in FMW in Japan, I mean, the guy was awesome. I mean, he tore it up.
Weaknesses, though. He had his weaknesses, and I think they were real obvious in WCW what they were. So
yeah, the 70s guy's gimmick was one of them.
Yeah, the Fat Chick Thriller. He had the gimmicks, boy. Boy, can you imagine a guy like, you know, with that much physical talent, and then giving him those horrible gimmicks, and yet they did. So, yeah, you're going to get
especially,
really over.
You know, look at the way he was pushed and presented in ECW, and he leaves for some money, thinking, you know, maybe I'll be just as big in WCW, and what do they do with him? Mike, we got the quick gimmick for you.
Thriller.
You are going to attract fat women and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to make guys think you're really cool, huh?
Yeah.
They'll get really behind you. Let me see. Let's go to... Oh, this is from Jason, who goes, one of my friends told me he had a hunch that Russ McCullough... would be the stalker. Russ McCullough, when he was in Ohio Valley, I mean, there's no question that they were training him for an eventual feud with The Undertaker at some point, but Russ McCullough is so far from being ready, and even if they thought he was, he just had knee surgery, so it ain't going to happen. It's not going to be him. And I just don't see anything in Russ McCullough. I never have. You know, and I've seen a lot of him. Let's go to Sean in New York.
How about the Big Show?
How you doing, guys?
I don't want to hear about the Big Show.
He's a big guy, you know.
Okay. What's up, Sean?
How you doing?
Really good.
I was just wondering, this is just like, I just wanted to hear your and Brian's opinion on this. What do you think the chances are of the NWO resurfacing? And Vince owns all the past WCW gimmicks and everything, right?
He could do it. He could do the NWO. I don't understand.
I would have once said zero, but I can't even say that today. I don't think there's much of a chance of it happening, but he's got the trademark, so you know someday he may do something with it. Destroy him one last time. You know when he might do it is I'm sure they won't do it now. I mean I'm sure. I'd say 0% now. Now February, March of next year, if Hall and Nash come in as a package and business is down, hey, anything's possible. Get Hall, Nash, and Bischoff.
Bischoff.
Hey, I don't rule. I'll tell you what. I think Eric Bischoff in WWF would mean money. I really do.
Yeah.
He's a good interview. People believe that him and Vince hate each other. I don't know that Vince would ever want to do it. But as ridiculous as that gimmick sounds on the surface, I think it's a good idea.
How do Vince and Bischoff feel about each other in real life? Do these guys hate each other?
They hated each other for real at one point, but
I think when you hate somebody for a long time and then you finally crush them in the end, you don't hate them so much afterwards.
And when you need a job and you have a chance to go on TV and make money, you kind of overlook a lot of things. So I mean I don't know where Vince's mentality would be on that one, but I do believe if Vince McMahon called up Eric Bischoff and goes, look, let's make some money. I think Eric Bischoff would go.
I think that would be great.
I mean, he's never told me that, but I think he would.
And one last question: what do you think is going on with Flair? If he's gonna accept a buyout or what?
Doesn't look good. Looks like he's just. We're not going to see Flair. I hope that's I mean, we talk about Flair every day, and Bill Goldberg and Ric Flair. It doesn't look good for either of them. At the same time, like 7 weeks from now, that may be totally different. And I think pretty strongly that those two, they really should sign those two. It's just there's something about having them there. I think will make a world of difference in this angle, and this angle is the one that's going to make it or break it, and Bill, whatever money
I just look at it as they need to do it now. I mean, they need to get off to a good start. Why start, see things not going well, and then go, we probably should have done this at the beginning, and then bring them in.
Yeah.
I think eventually they're going to be in, so why not just do it now?
I think that they need to have they need to have a blockbuster show and a blockbuster lineup when they're out there the first time, because if they come in with something second rate, the thing it'll be stillborn. It really will.
Okay, guys, I'll let you guys get going. Have a great day. You guys are the best. I'm a big fan.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Scott. I think Scott's going to be our last caller. Is Scott still here?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Hey.
Doing good.
Do you guys think the UFC are going to end up papering?
I think they don't have a choice.
Yeah, I think I'll head down to that one because it seems weird that they're pricing it like a boxing show, but since it's not at like, Atlantic City or Vegas, they're not going to get, all this money for these tickets. So how many have they sold? Like 2,000?
2,100 as of a couple days ago.
Yeah, so you think if we go down, it would probably get in free?
That I don't know how you would go about or how they're going to go about doing it, so I really couldn't answer it, but I've got to believe that, I can tell you that they are hoping for and probably expecting a big walk-up on this one because they're going to do a lot of last week publicity. So, but as far as the idea that they're going to be able to sell 12,000, 13,000 tickets, I don't think that they're going to be able to.
I think it's a horrible location. As far, it's not even in like the Garden where it's like in the middle of this big city. You got all this, media attention and stuff like that.
You can't tell me the Meadowlands is a horrible location. It sells out for plenty of events. It's if people want to see it in New York, it's not that hard. You know what I mean? If you want to go, it's like the thing in the Cow Palace here. It's like, you know what? If wrestling was hot, they would sell out the Cow Palace for wrestling, even though the Cow Palace isn't that great of a place. Because, all things considered, when you want to see an actor or something, you really don't consider the venue, or if it's 10 minutes out of the city and you want to see the UFC.
Just look at the hot period when WCW did like the 23 sellouts in a row. It wasn't like they had 22 sellouts and then didn't sell out an event because it was in a bad location or a seedy neighborhood.
I think the UFC audience is basically half UFC fans, and then it just so happens that half people who are around during when it's taking place, and they see that this advertised event. Why don't I go? As far as especially when they're in Atlanta.
Everyone's been to the Meadowlands for a sports event. Haven't they? That lives in the New York market. It's not like it's like some arena that no one's ever been to, and they have to find directions. It's like I don't buy the location if they don't draw. If they don't draw, it's just because there weren't 10,000 people or 12,000 people in the New York market who want to see UFC yet. They're not ready for the card. What do you think of the card? It's not a marquee card for drawing a lot of people. I think on paper it looks like a lot of good matches. Which is, they don't really have it.
That's something that only a hardcore fan can analyze.
Yeah, I know. But they didn't want to go the route of, and they can't. Joe Silva was on the show. In his opinion, the only real draws that UFC have are Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie. Neither of whom are going to do UFC now. So he just figured put on the best card possible and make it a good show, which is that's what they did the last show. They had a hell of a show the last show. Again, Randy Couture and Pedro Hizzo, only the hardcore fans really know him. I think really all UFC has is the hardcore fans who know these guys, and then casual people who are going to go, hey, I've never seen a UFC live. Let's go. And that's what they're going to draw is those two groups of people.
Yeah. And
they've never seen one live it's never been close enough to New York City before.
Finally, I got my hands on the AAA When Worlds Collide, and I watched it, and I thought it was a really good pay-per-view, except I thought the main event was, pretty bad.
Conan and Perro?
Yeah.
It was just a blood match, yeah. Well, that's...
I thought the color job was amazing.
Mike Tenay? Mike Tenay was amazing.
Kissing the women, I thought that was disgusting, but, kissing the women in the crowd. But I thought, every other match on the show was just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and the tag match was a phenomenal match.
Yeah, the Guerrero match was, the Guerrero and our bar match was awesome. And then there was that one spot where he, gave him the Hurricane Rana off his shoulders, and I thought he killed him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they saw, I think it was Great Sasuke and Shinjiro Otani did it in Japan a week before, or somebody, or no, maybe it was Eddie Guerrero, and they decided they were going to do it, and they didn't quite do it.
I think they had that same problem in WCW once off that spot, but things happen.
Yeah. Okay, we are totally out of time. I want to thank you, Scott, for calling in. And we're going to have Brian Blair on the show tomorrow. We'll be talking about his book, Smarten Up, and talk about Brian, who's still wrestling, and Brian's had a long career and follows wrestling very, very closely. So we'll be seeing you all tomorrow at 5. You got any comments on that?
I'm not even worried. It takes a while.
Oh, it does take a while. The main event did a 4.8, the Benoit-Austin match. So that was it was a higher rating than the main event the week before. The show started lower. In fact, they did 3.4 in their first quarter, which is incredibly low for Raw. And they grew pretty much the whole show. There was one little blip when Albert and Eddie Guerrero were out, where the rating went down a little bit. Actually, that's the only time the rating declined the whole
Still,
show.
that's a positive, though, because last week that didn't happen.
No, it was a positive. That's right, absolutely. As far as the rating grew and all that. So, I mean, it was a good show for the most part. I mean, some people didn't like the finish. I didn't really dislike the finish as much as the mentality. The mentality behind the finish left a lot to be desired, but the actual finish itself is just it's a wrestling cliche. So
yeah. The one thing is, of all the quarters to worry about, I would fret least about that first quarter, just because it's always low. Everybody always expects it's going to be that stupid interview. If that first quarter got a 0.1 and then it immediately jumped to like a 5 in the second quarter, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Let me see what we got here. Let's see. Heat set its all-time low, or tied its all-time low with another 1.1. They were doing a 2.5 with that show a year ago this time, so that's a hell of a drop.
Like when it first debuted, it was an A show.
No, 2.5 was already when it was a C show last year at this time. I mean, when it first was debuting, they topped 4s many times. Yeah. So that show is dying a miserable death in the ratings right now.
And the thing is, I haven't even been watching it every single week, but it's almost like every week they have to try and experiment with something different. Oh, let's get a new guy out here. Let's have Michael Cole to set. Let's have these guys do commentary. Let's do some goofball thing with Hunter in the hospital, which actually was pretty good, but, how was anyone supposed to know about that? They didn't really plug that on SmackDown either. It was just like, well, if you watch the weekend shows, you'll know that Hunter's going to be there, or if you go to WWF.com or whatever. But it's just like, they need to find a format and stick with it. I don't know what the format is that people would watch, but...
Wasn't Sunday like the Grandmaster Sexay Steve Blackman day?
Yes, it was. I actually watched that show.
And there you go. I mean, if ever there's going to be a day where people go, this is the one to skip.
Yeah.
That's the one. Speaking of Grandmaster, he's still fired. There's actually nothing new on that at all. Let's see. A couple of things from OneWrestling.com. They mentioned that Booker T had signed a release, Time Warner buyout, which I'm presuming is true, and everyone, pretty much it's expected in WWF that Booker T and Buff Bagwell, who is not, someone from WWF told me that they thought he might have signed, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't. I know his contract is up June 24th, but pretty much Booker T and Buff Bagwell are pretty much considered in. Paige is in the situation where everyone's kind of on the, everyone expects Paige in, but he has not gotten his buyout yet, so he's in the middle of that one. But I know he wants to be in, or at least that's what they think he wants to be in, and I'm sure he does. So that's the status there. Now, as far as anything having to do with WCW, the new WCW being on TBS or ever being on TBS, I mean, I had 3 different WWF sources, including the main one, say that there was nothing to it, there was never anything to it, and even if they wanted there to be something to it, they couldn't do it because they got an exclusive contract with Viacom. So that's what I was told.
There you go.
So there you go. We got, let's see, the poll question for today.
I was talking to someone about the buyout, and they didn't know for certain, but they were talking about, it might have been something where when Vince bought the company, there was like a no-compete clause where TBS and TNT can't even have any wrestling programming, even if they want to, for like 5 or 10 years. That would be bad news.
That I don't
even
know.
if like a year down the road where everything kind of turns around in the media or whatever, and people are more accepting of wrestling, and someone from TNT goes, hey, might as well get a wrestling show on now. If they have the no-compete, then there's nothing they can do.
There may be that.
And it totally sounds like something that Vince would do.
Well, when you buy companies, generally speaking, you always put a no-compete clause in the thing. Now, it may be a no-compete that they,
that they start a company. But they were talking about like no-compete as far as putting anything on their TV stations.
Yeah, well, obviously, but they already have the thing on the Turner South. And I would, wasn't there a Braves game? Now, I could be wrong about this, where there was a rain out and they put wrestling on in the last week. Just like old tapes of wrestling, just to fill time, and this would have been on TBS, or was it on Turner South? I forget. I got an email from someone who was watching, WCW, and they said the Braves are having a rain out, and there's wrestling on right now.
Huh.
So now the Turner South deal is up through, I think 2003 or 2005. And that's a WWF deal that they had to take on when they bought the company. So the Turner Classics shows, even though the WWF owns the footage, that contract is still with.
I don't think they would be so much concerned about a channel like Turner South, though. I think it would be more TNT and TBS.
Well, if the thing was on TBS, then that would tell you that that's not the case. That there's no thing on that. Now, as far as starting their own company, I would be certain that they signed a non-compete that these guys couldn't start their own wrestling company because, I mean, you know, if you own a company like that, like a wrestling company, and you just go, hey, we're going to sell it, you know, and they get like, say, $20 million, and the next day they, you know, open up a new company.
Start a company.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, that's ridiculous, and, you know, Vince would never be dumb enough to fall for that. So I'm sure there's a no-compete as far as them owning the company, as far as them putting something on. I mean, there very well may be, but I just don't know. What else? Actually, we don't have any other big news other than SmackDown's tonight. There's a super main event from all accounts. Nothing?
I don't think there's anything else.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
What a week this will be.
What?
What a week this will be.
Oh, it's going to be a big weekend. This is from Michael, who goes, why is the share higher this week than the share last week if this week had slightly less viewers? That's because there were less people. The share is the percentage of television sets that are on, that are watching. So fewer television sets were on because all the networks are in reruns than the week before. So even though there were fewer viewers, they actually had a higher share. But the rating is the percentage of the total universe of homes, and that was slightly down. And it was only slightly down from last week. But anyway, that's why.
You know, that's completely right, and it makes perfect sense. But I can completely understand why we get that question like every week, because sometimes I'll be sitting here listening to your explanation and I'll get confused.
Hey,
I understand it.
You got to read next week's Observer when I talk about the Hispanic ratings. You know, those things those things are a total joke. Just so you know, they're a complete joke. Last week's ratings.
Isn't it like if you add things up, things just don't work out?
Well, they certainly didn't this week. Last week, their rating for Galavision, not last week, Tuesday night's rating for Galavision for the 3-hour block among the males 18 to 34 was like bigger than the WWF's. Much bigger. I mean, much bigger than the WWF's the night before.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's only rating Spanish households, so that's not inconceivable. But it is inconceivable that. How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. It's going to be a big show because our special guest today is Mick Foley. We'll be up in about a half an hour. We'll be talking about his book. We'll be talking about his career. And pretty much anything you guys want to talk to Mick Foley about, you can talk to him. So have your questions ready because we want to go through as many calls as callers as we can tonight, because I'm sure that we're going to be overloaded with callers and emails once he's on. Bryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good. Any big news?
Can you hear that outside?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to worry.
What is it?
It's the hottest day of the year, and there's like they're building a rock quarry across the street or something, and I can't shut the window. I'm dying.
Those poor workers.
Yes.
It's the hottest day of the year here too. It's 104 when I just got in before the show.
Really?
Yeah. So
I think it's like 70 here, and I consider that the hottest day of the year.
Good grief. 70? I wish it was 70. Oh my God.
Maybe a little hotter. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any big news? Actually, oh, you know things are slow. You know what I did last night? I mean, like, I went probably for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years without ever having any free time, right? So now I, at times, like, actually, like, have free time. So,
and
like,
you don't know what to do.
Well, I still don't watch much television, so I could always do that. But, you know, usually with free time, I try to figure out, what can I do that has to do with wrestling? So I was
it's like
back.
this weekend, it was Memorial Day, and I didn't go do anything, and I had all this free time, and I did the newsletter, and I pretty much did everything I needed to do for the day, and I just kind of sat there, and it was like, okay, now what? You know?
Yeah, because I used to always, I mean, there was never a time when I would be caught up on tapes, right? Now it's like I'm going like, oh, I hope somebody sends me a tape. You know, I want to watch, I want to watch some Japanese wrestling. I want to watch some
I got something I can send you as a tape, too, when I'm done watching it. One of our callers from a few months ago sent me his Tough Enough tape. And I will be watching it, and then I will send it on to you.
By the way, Bryan, did you get, since we're talking about that, did you get the tape that I sent you of the, was it Fukuoka Dome?
Yeah, I just got it. Thanks.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but...
so you have not been crying lately, have you?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh, the whole show. Just 2 hours of sadness. For all sorts of different reasons. Not that the show... I mean, except for the main event And except for the last two matches, I mean, it was really good television. And then the last two matches were just unbelievably bad, but we can talk about that later. But one of the things was so weird. So anyway, last night, I'm going like, there's probably not going to be a ton of news this weekend in wrestling because there's no big shows. So, it's just going to be Raw, and, there's nothing huge in Japan. I mean, the biggest shows are Wednesday and Friday of next week, which will be in the following week's Observer. So I'm going like, I've never had problems filling an Observer. And a lot of times on, like, Thursday and Friday, I go, I'm going to have problems, and I never do. So last night I was thinking, I may have problems. So what I did was I wrote a story about, like that thing like last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but just trying to find ironies and stuff. So I went, last year at this time, 5 years ago at this time, and 10 years ago at this time, just looked back at some old notes. And, there's quite a few ironies when you actually read them. It's real interesting. But what's so interesting is a year ago in American wrestling, everything is so completely different. 5 years ago, it's like another world. I mean, I'm thinking back, 5 years ago was like the World Wrestling Peace Festival in L.A. for the few of you listening who were actually at that show or remember that show, which was a hell of a show. And to me, it just seems like, that was like a lifetime ago, right? So then I'm going 10 years back, and of course 10 years back in American wrestling, God, was Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter feuding, you know what I mean? Or something like that. So anyway, but what was interesting is in every home that was watching Galavision Lucha Libre, which would not include my home because I wasn't watching it, but whoever taped it for you would include their home, would have to average, for the ratings to make sense, 2.5 males between the age of 18 to 49 per household, for those numbers to add up. So think about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that would work in the instance of the tape that I got.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about the rest of the nation, though.
Well, it's got to be in every single home. Anyway,
I count the two people that taped it, and then me as one half.
Okay, then that's actually perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're between 18 and 49. It's from Zach McGee, who was going, I was wondering what your thoughts are on CZW and people comparing them with early ECW. I don't really compare them with ECW at all, because ECW used bigger name talent. From the start, they mixed in like the local guys and then big names, and then more big names, and then Paulie created his own stars, and there was more booking. This stuff is more extreme and brutal, and the high spots of the young guys are really, really good. I don't know. It's way too early. Of course, ECW started with not that many fans, but they also had Paulie, and Paulie is kind of a genius.
And they had Tito Santana.
Like, that made a difference. If you think they have... Yeah, they did.
Hey, it may have made a difference with 2.5 Hispanic viewers per home watching Galavision.
Okay. If you think they have what it takes to be the promotion that competes with the WWF in a few years, don't pull the cart before the horse. ECW never could compete with WWF, the thing with wrestling is in a few years, who the hell knows? I mean, I would say on the surface, like, the idea of CZW competing with WWF is ridiculous. But in 5 years, who the hell knows? I mean, this business, What can you say? Which of these teams with a bad gimmick would you say was the best in the ring? Money Incorporated, Dynamic Dudes, the Islanders, the New Heart Foundation, which was Owen and Jim Neidhart, and High Energy, which was Owen and Coco Beware. I guess of those, Money Incorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Why were they incorporated?
I don't know.
In case the team lost all their money?
I guess so, yeah. It's from John from Toronto. Goes, when WCW finally gets up and running, what women do you and Bryan think will be there? Let's see. Tori Wilson. They're negotiating with. Yeah, they're negotiating with Tori Wilson. Stacey Keebler's under contract, and I haven't heard any other names. He goes, me personally, I hope. They're not bringing her in, are they?
No,
you're being facetious, huh? I know.
Yeah.
He goes, me personally, I hope Dawn Marie's included. There's always that possibility. I know it sounds cheesy, but Dawn Marie and Miss Hancock in a feud would be so fun and entertaining. I don't know about that. Because once they have to wrestle, it kind of kills it, doesn't it? I mean, if they're in a feud...
It kills it with a lot of the valleys that they have doing wrestling.
I think that if they have, like, a deal where Dawn Marie has a good worker, and Miss Hancock, Stacey Keebler has a good worker, and they have the women run around in the course of the match, that would be okay. But if they make it like a one-on-one feud without the guys to back them up, it's kind of hopeless because ultimately in wrestling you've got to, you're just naturally going to put them in the ring, and then it kind of dies because, Dawn Marie has been training, and Stacey Keebler, God, I don't know. I just remember her matches, and I just remember those Nitro Girl matches in WCW, and they were, they didn't work. Let's see, this is from Ken Murphy, who goes, are there any Pride shows other than the Pride Grand Prix and Return of the Warriors that have been released on video? I do not know the answer. Does anyone know the answer if any of the other Prides have been released? Those are the only two that I've heard of. I don't know. At the video stores. Let's see. In Mexico, in EMLL, it's the exact same guys on top 10 years ago. I mean, it's like they had a big tournament, and it's like Rayo de Jalisco and Cien Cars and Mascherano dos Mil. And I'm reading about how bad these guys are. And they're still there on top. It's 10 years later. Nothing ever changes. You know, the Vianos and, Porky and... Anyway, I don't know.
I can't remember who it was, but I was watching somebody on EMLL, and they looked about 100 years old, and they did a tope. I'm trying to remember who it was. But anyway, I was comparing him to someone like... Huh?
It wasn't Satanico, was it?
No. Anyway, I was comparing him to like somebody in All Japan, one of those guys that's just been around forever, and it's just, he still has a role. And also I just thought, that's everyone on this entire roster in EMLL with about 10 exceptions. I mean, they're all so old.
Yeah. They work that different stuff. And it's fun because they actually... The EMLL main event style is like it's a great style for the live crowd. I mean, they're not, there's one thing when you go to Mexico live, and as far as the wrestling goes, is that the wrestlers, because they're so experienced.
Ringo Mendoza, that's who it was.
Oh, he's old. Ringo Mendoza was, I remember, Ringo Mendoza got his name from, Ringo Starr of the Beatles. So,
yes.
just think about how old that is.
There.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And so anyway, Ringo Mendoza, I remember him from the 70s. But, so anyway, the guys, those older guys like Satanico and, they know how to work a live crowd. They're not really as good at TV because our culture, TV's been so important, and in their culture, TV's now been around for 10 years and the younger guy, but there's the idea of working the camera. It's not really something that's been passed down from generation to generation in Mexico like in the United States, but the idea of working the live crowd, and remember these guys in Mexico are out there working, 5 to 8 to 10 times a week. So, the number of matches they have is just, and 20-minute matches, even though they're all 6-man tags. So, they have so much ring time in there. And, they're just like, it's just like really, I don't know. It's just really interesting to watch, that aspect of their game. They're ahead of like almost anyone. In other aspects, obviously, because of their age, they're not.
Still, you look at them at that age, and they'll just be doing their regular match, and all of a sudden, some like 200-year-old man will bust out a tope or something. You just in total awe of this.
You know what? I always wish, this was one of my wishes that never came true, and now Larry Zbyszko is no longer an announcer, and WCW is no longer a company, it never happened. But remember when the Luchadors first started in WCW, like 96-ish? And 5 years ago, Rey Mysterio Jr. was about to start in WCW. So that's exactly when it was. So anyway, when Larry Zbyszko would always go, when they would do a hot move, he would always like not put it over and go, they're going to have such a short career, which actually, Larry Zbyszko's been wrestling for a long time, and that is kind of like what a veteran wrestler who's all ached and pained from doing an easier style would say. Yeah. And he's right, okay? But I always wish that somebody would just go to him and just go, everyone in EMLL is older than you. You've been retired for 5 years. They're still on top. So what does that say?
And they're still working 5 nights a week.
They're working, and they're still having good matches. So there. But anyway, let's see what else is going on. Couple of notes right at the end of the show yesterday. Actually, we got the ratings. I guess we could start with that. Ratings were 4.2. Actually, it was down from last week by percentage points. It was down like about 65,000 viewers from last week, which on a national basis is not very much, but it's the 8th straight week where they declined. And that's coming off of their best week of TV in a long time. I don't know what to say about it, other than that's what the number says. And I don't know.